Breaking news. Prince William has just shut down Chris Starmer's most explosive proposal yet, and what followed sent Britain into total upheaval. Emergency cabinet talks erupted, confidential files leaked, and the nation was pushed toward a constitutional showdown that threatened centuries of tradition. Stay with me, because the fallout from this royal standoff rewrites everything we thought we knew about British power. It all ignited at 9:42 a.m. yesterday when Keir Starmer unveiled his sweeping Housing and Immigration Integration Act before Parliament, declaring Britain must build 500,000 new homes, even if rural communities resist. The proposal included staggering measures: enforced housing targets for migrants in historic villages, forced land acquisitions from farmers, and strict punishments for councils that refused to fall in line. But Prince William drew a hard line. In a move never seen before, the Prince of Wales bypassed protocol and reached out directly to senior Conservative MPs, and within 3 hours the legislation collapsed. According to multiple palace insiders, his warning was blunt and unflinching. This was not reform, but an assault on rural Britain, its communities, and the legacy his family has spent generations defending. I will not remain silent while Westminster steamrolls our heritage. The fallout was immediate and severe. By 2:30 p.m., 47 Conservative MPs had committed to opposing the bill, and by 4 p.m., a dozen Labour backbenchers from rural seats were openly hesitating. Starmer's flagship proposal, the core of his housing agenda, was unraveling before it ever reached a vote. Insiders at Number 10 said the Prime Minister was livid, pacing his office and demanding to know who had leaked the bill's details to the palace. According to senior Labour MP Wes Streeting, Starmer hurled a folder across the room and erupted, accusing William of trying to dictate policy, insisting a prince had no authority over Parliament, and raging that this was why critics wanted the entire system scrapped. But what Starmer failed to grasp was that William had been preparing for this moment for months. Palace sources say the Prince of Wales quietly examined the real impact of Labour's housing plans, personally visiting 14 rural communities since September. He spoke with farmers, village councils, and local historians, walked through centuries-old estates slated for demolition, and sat in local pubs with families facing total loss. These visits were deliberately kept off the record, with no cameras, statements, or announcements, allowing William to uncover the facts without political spectacle. As one senior aide put it, the prince was building his own case in silence, so when the full Housing Act finally surfaced, he already understood every damaging detail. That he had already reviewed the early draft through Conservative channels, analyzed the compulsory purchase clauses, and grasped the cultural integration zones more clearly than many Labour MPs. So when William acted, it was not reckless royal intrusion but a deliberate, strategic strike that landed with crushing force. At the same time, the communities he sought to defend, the overlooked corners of rural Britain, were enduring hardships the media largely ignores. Consider Graham Harrison, a 71-year-old farmer from the Cotswolds whose family worked the same land for 45 years, land first farmed by his grandfather. Last month, a council letter informed him that his 80-acre farm had been marked for compulsory purchase under Starmer's early directives, valued at £2.1 million yet offered just £890,000. This was not only the loss of a business but the erasure of a family legacy built through war, recovery, and generations of labor, now threatened by housing projects locals neither requested nor supported. When Graham tried to fight back, the imbalance became brutal, legal costs exceeding £200,000 with no promise of success, an appeals process stretching up to 2 years, and a bank that immediately slashed his credit by 60% after deeming the farm unstable collateral. His son, once set to inherit the land, has already left for Australia, seeing no future in British farming. Speaking to a local reporter, Graham said he had survived disease outbreaks and financial crashes, but could not survive a government that treated him as something to be cleared away. And while families like the Harrisons face ruin, Starmer and his cabinet continue to operate from a world of privilege far removed from these realities. Chauffeur-driven vehicles, luxury residences, and expense claims large enough to stun the public have become routine, with cabinet ministers logging £847,000 in costs in a single quarter, including £34,000 for the Prime Minister's personal photographer. The contrast is so extreme and so ethically hollow that even long-standing Labour heartlands are turning away. Across villages in Yorkshire, Cumbria, and Devon, lifelong Labour supporters are tearing up membership cards and vowing never to return. Dorothy Ainsworth, an 82-year-old retired nurse who voted Labor for 6 straight decades, shared a message that spread rapidly online, saying she once believed the party stood for working people but now sees a leadership obsessed with targets and figures instead of the communities that built the nation, adding that Prince William showed more compassion in a single speech than Labor had shown all year. Then came a moment no one expected. Prince William shattered 4 decades of royal restraint by speaking out publicly. At the Royal Agricultural Show in Cirencester yesterday, he delivered what insiders describe as the most politically charged address by a senior royal since Princess Diana. With emotion barely restrained, he asked what kind of Britain is being created, whether the country is protecting the communities that give it character or dismantling them for a version of progress no one endorsed. The crowd of 3,000 farmers and rural residents erupted into applause that lasted 4 minutes, footage showing William pausing, visibly affected, before declaring that rural heritage is not a barrier to remove but the very foundation of the nation. Palace sources later revealed he wrote the speech himself without consulting his father or the communications team, leaving Buckingham Palace staff completely caught off guard. One aide described the moment as William crossing a point of no return, deliberately stepping into political controversy because he believed the cost of silence was too great. The visual impact was crushing for Starmer, the heir to the throne, a future king, standing shoulder to shoulder with ordinary Britons while a Labour government that claims to speak for working people appeared disconnected. William came across as firm, principled, and rooted in real communities, while Starmer seemed to embody his harshest criticism, an out-of-touch London lawyer detached from traditional Britain. What makes the intervention even more striking is that several sources confirm King Charles personally tried to dissuade his son from delivering the speech. At Clarence House 2 nights earlier, Charles reportedly warned that direct political involvement could undermine the monarchy's carefully protected neutrality, a discussion that stretched nearly 3 hours and grew increasingly tense. According to a palace insider, William responded by pointing out that his father had spent a lifetime championing the environment, traditional farming, and rural life, asking why silence was expected now, when those values faced their greatest threat in generations, and questioning the purpose of the monarchy if it would not defend what truly matters. Charles reportedly offered no rebuttal, only a warning of consequences, to which William replied that some causes are worth the cost. That exchange revealed a deeper shift. William was not simply weighing in on a single policy, but reshaping what the modern monarchy represents, even at personal risk. The fallout was immediate and severe. Within 2 hours of his speech, the pound fell 1.4% against the dollar as markets reacted to fears of constitutional tension. International investors sold £3.2 billion in British government bonds, and major companies tied to construction and housing development saw their share prices slide. Crest Nicholson plunged 8%, Barratt Development slid 11%, and Taylor Wimpey sank 9% as the shockwaves spread. Within 90 minutes, Defend Rural Britain was trending worldwide, hitting number 1 in the UK, Canada, and Australia, generating 2.7 million posts in just 6 hours. Protests flared nationwide. In the Cotswolds, 4,000 people blocked the A40, while in Devon farmers drove tractors into Exeter's city centre and refused to budge. In North Yorkshire, an entire village of 600 residents marched to their MP's office, demanding he oppose the bill or step aside. Polling delivered a brutal verdict. A Snap YouGov survey found 68% of Britons backing Prince William's intervention, with only 19% supporting Starmer, and even more damaging, 41% of Labour's own 2024 voters agreeing the Prince was right to speak out. For the first time since the election, the Conservatives edged ahead at 34% to Labour's 31%, with Reform UK surging to 18%. Starmer was no longer just losing a political fight, he was losing the country. Then came the global embarrassment. Foreign leaders who would normally steer clear of Britain's internal affairs openly criticized Starmer. Canada's Prime Minister praised William's defense of rural heritage, a remark Downing Street privately viewed as a diplomatic rebuke. New Zealand's leader described the housing plans as troubling and urged Britain to respect its traditions, while France's president made a pointed statement in Paris about cultural identity never being sacrificed for political convenience. The message was unmistakable: Starmer had become a liability abroad. Inside Number 10, the mood descended into chaos, with ministers tearing into one another over who leaked the bill to the palace. Reports say the deputy prime minister confronted the chancellor in a corridor, accusing her camp of sabotage, only to be met with a furious response that the opposing team couldn't manage a strategy if their futures depended on it. Housing Secretary Matthew Pennycook reportedly told an aide, "This is a complete disaster. We're finished." WhatsApp groups with names like Rural Caucuses and Save Labor are exploding with messages from backbench MPs demanding the bill's immediate withdrawal. The question isn't if they'll move against Starmer's leadership, it's when. Veteran Labour MP Harriet Harman, serving since 1982, privately messaged 30 colleagues that quickly leaked to the Telegraph, "We cannot win a fight against the monarchy and rural Britain simultaneously. This bill must die or we die with it." Even Starmer's closest allies are abandoning him. Shadow cabinet members who once praised the Housing Act are now strikingly silent. Environment Secretary Steve Reed, representing rural constituencies, refused to defend the bill during question time, stating only that the party is listening to concerns, a clear signal that Starmer stands alone. Sources say the Prime Minister appeared shell-shocked during today's session, barely meeting his MP's eyes, stumbling over prepared answers, and leaving the chamber 20 minutes early, an unprecedented move in modern memory. Adding to the crisis, leaked documents obtained by GB News reveal previously undisclosed provisions in the Housing and Immigration Integration Act. If verified, these show Starmer intentionally withheld the most controversial elements from his own party. Page 47 details cultural integration zones, granting the government authority to designate entire villages as mandatory settlement areas for recent migrants, with quotas enforced by financial penalties on councils. Section 12 empowers ministers to override local planning decisions with no accountability and no appeal process, exposing a level of control that could ignite permanent political fallout. Communities would have no say, no vote, no voice. Page 63 of the leaked draft revealed the most explosive detail, a rural modernization fund of £8 billion earmarked for demolishing historically significant structures in villages to make way for culturally appropriate housing. The implications were staggering. The plan targeted stone cottages, centuries-old pubs, and village churches, replacing them with standardized blocks. If true, Starmer wasn't just building homes, he was erasing Britain's heritage village by village, and Prince William knew about it before Parliament. Meanwhile, the Conservatives moved with ruthless precision. Opposition leader Rishi Sunak delivered a speech in Parliament this morning that reminded the country why he once led it. While the Prime Minister plots to demolish Britain's villages, he declared, voice rising with controlled fury, "We stand with the communities that made this nation great. We stand with farmers. We stand with families. And we stand with Prince William." The chamber erupted in cheers so loud Speaker Lindsay Hoy had to suspend proceedings for 3 minutes. As Starmer scrambled to save his collapsing bill, Sunak appeared statesmanlike, principled, and rooted in British values. The contrast was stark. Polls reflected the shift. Conservatives jumped from 34% to 39% in 48 hours, while Labour plummeted from 31% to 24%, their lowest since the election. For the first time since 2010, the Tories hold a double-digit lead. Sunak wasn't just winning a policy battle, he was reclaiming the narrative of Britain's future, standing shoulder to shoulder with the future king while Starmer stood increasingly isolated and desperate. The next 72 hours will decide everything as Parliament reconvenes Monday for the Housing Act vote, with cabinet ministers threatening mass resignations if Starmer presses ahead. Backbench MPs quietly gathering signatures for a no-confidence motion, and rural groups preparing what organizers say could be the largest protest in modern British history, with 100,000 people expected outside Westminster. The question is no longer whether the bill survives, but whether Starmer does. Britain is watching a constitutional crisis, a political collapse, and a royal confrontation unfold at the same time, a moment that will be analyzed for decades as the point when a prime minister forgot that in Britain you do not challenge the monarchy, dismiss rural communities, or assume the public will accept whatever Westminster dictates. At the center of it all stands Starmer, increasingly isolated, visibly desperate, and edging toward the end. The last time a government faced simultaneous resistance from the palace, rural Britain, and its own MPs was in 1936 during the abdication crisis, and that administration collapsed within months. History may not repeat itself, but it echoes. Now the final choice looms. Does Starmer pull the bill and concede defeat, or force it through and take his government down with it? Did Prince William rescue rural Britain, or ignite a constitutional shock that reshapes the monarchy itself? And if Labour falls, who takes over next, Rishi Sunak returning to number 10, or an unexpected figure no one sees coming? The debate is raging, and the country is watching, because what happens next will define Britain's future.